Good morning, everyone. This is Jay Johnson with dailytexture.com. This morning, I'm having my coffee and I am testing out a new texture. And this is something I do every time I start working on a new set. And I worked on, this is the first in a new set that'll be coming out in April. And if it goes right. And I worked on this one yesterday and I decided before I go any further with this style, I need to test it with one of my images, and so I thought I would do that on video. This set's going to be full of more softer, natural tones. You know, I'm all into the warm, really hot, and really vibrant colors. Of course, you can vibrant these up by adjusting saturation, or even tone it down even more by pulling it down. You can darken them by adjusting exposure, or brighten them by adjusting exposure. So I just, with all this new growth around with spring, it's inspired me. And of course, everything has been kind of soft in tone as it starts to grow. And we've just had 2 days of massive rain, so everything's getting a little bit brighter. But the colors have inspired me that have been going on the last couple of weeks, and that's where the set's coming in. And so it's going to be a big set if all goes well with the editing of the paintings. It's going to be a big set, and it has a lot of natural tones in it. But I wanted to work with one first just to see how they're going to work out. I have this bluebird photo I got at Shiloh, where I go to watch the eagles. It's sitting out there 10, 11 hours a day, and there's nothing going on. Can get kind of boring, but we have little songbirds around that entertain us, and this is one of our little bluebirds that entertain us. And I thought he might look nice with this texture, especially because this little splash of blue right here. So I've lined him up where I would want to blend him and put, he's on a layer on top. And I wouldn't, let me bring up the original photo here that I worked from, because it was quite a bit smaller. It was a horizontal and I'm working on a vertical texture. But as this is the original photo, you can see all the bokeh here in the background from the lights in the background. And this is not something as is that I would hang on my wall. And my goal with my photos is to turn them into a more artistic look so that they would become appropriate for hanging in a frame and hanging on the wall. Now, if you like just straight photography hanging on your wall, then this might appeal. But I prefer a more artistic, painterly look to all the work that's hanging on my wall. I have a lot of paintings hanging on my walls, and I have a lot of my finished work with the photos and the textures, which now look like paintings, hanging on my walls. So this would not appeal to me to hang on the wall, and that's why I take these and do what I do. Now I have enlarged him up, and of course I haven't done any editing on him at this point, which I'm going to do right now. I'm working in Topaz Photo FX Lab, my software of choice, because I have access to all of these great little modules of Topaz. And I'm going to run Topaz denoise on him because it was a low light day, so it is a little noisy, and because I've blown him up. And I'll run Topaz impression on him to give him a little more painterly effect. And that tones down the noise a little, so I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to give him a clarity boost, which is going to probably reintroduce some noise. Which is why I love to use Topaz Impression on these that have noise in them, because my oil glaze preset that I set up, that I work with quite a bit, is just enough of a preset to soften everything and smooth out that noise a little bit. It, just makes it way nicer looking when you look at them up close. And I look at all of mine up close like this. Not that anybody's going to be looking at it that way if it's hanging on the wall, because they're most likely going to see it at a distance. And I toned it down a little bit. That's where Topaz Impression is going to come in handy, though. Now I'm going to do Topaz Clarity. I like Fur and Feathers 1 and 2, which will boost everything a little bit. I think I like 1 in this case. It's a little softer. So I'm going to click OK. And as these are processing, I'm looking at where the light's coming from. Of course, it's coming from behind him, so he's got this little ring of light here. But as I look at the texture, on this particular one, the light is structured to come from up here. So that's where I want to focus on as far as light. And I need to get rid of all of this. So it's time. Sorry, I had a piece of cat hair on my tablet. I had to blow that off of there. It's time to do a little masking. So I'm going to the masking tab here. And just going to take away a lot of this really quickly, the larger areas. And I'll get a smaller brush as I get in closer. Now I'm working with a very soft brush. I have the edge wear all the way down. If I had the edge wear all the way up, I could go right along here and it would pick up the edges. And sometimes I'll do that if I want something to be very strong on the edges. But sometimes it can look kind of choppy, so I put it down, and I use a very soft brush when I go around the edges, and I actually blend the texture with the subject and right over the subject, because the viewer doesn't need to see every little detail of those edges. They just need to see a little bit of it, because their mind will fill in the rest if they just see a hint of it. But if I want to go around this, I put the edge wear all the way up and I can get it real accurately. But I'll still put it back down and go right over the edge of the bird when I'm working on this. It does help, though, if you want to get very accurate edging without going over the subject. Alright, now I'm going to put the edge wear back. I'm going to bring the flow, which is like opacity, down. And I'm actually going to tap right along here because I want a very soft blend. I don't like this sharp edge where this is going off, so I really want to blend this and have it just kind of come in gradually into the frame. And if I go over too much, I'll just go back the other direction on the masking. This is the way that I test a new texture. Is I'll grab one of my birds. Usually, since I have so many eagles, since that's what I photograph all the time, I will usually grab an eagle. I also have Tilda, who's my Mockingbird. I think you've seen her in some videos. I do her a lot. Going right over his feathers. If I go over too much, like I said, I can go back the other way. Right here is a area where I think I've gone over a little too much. And go back here and tap some more right on the very top edge. It's like painting, back and forth, back and forth. One thing that really needs to be clear with birds and animals is the eye and beak. So I want to go up and make sure that I don't have texture over that beak. That needs to be sharp, and the eye. And then I'll go back along the bottom edge a little, soften that up, and then I'll fit it back to the screen. And then often what I'll do, as you've seen, is I'll duplicate the texture layer, put it on top, and change layer modes and see what I come up with. It may darken it a little too much in this case, but soft light's one of my favorites. I can always adjust opacity. I do like it a little darker at the bottom. Also, on the duplicate layer, if I feel like I want to brighten it a little bit, I can raise the exposure. I like what that's doing to the lighting up here. I don't want it to get too blown out though, so. And it does darken the bottom a little. Excuse me, I need some coffee. Let's see what happens if I stretch this out a little and move it around. I don't have it at full opacity, so. That's a little bit too vibrant green. I want to stick with the natural color, so on the duplicate layer I'll bring down the saturation and I'll turn it on and off to see what it's doing. You see how it's shifting the light more toward the top? It may be a little too bright. And I'll play with saturation and exposure and get it exactly where I want it. It's just a slight adjustment. I think I have a little bit too much of that white ring from that bokeh showing right there. So I'm going to go back to the bird layer and with a little brush go in here and just tap a little bit more gently right along that edge. Soften that white line. I might even go over this feathers a little bit right here to tone this down, bringing in some of that texture from underneath so those aren't quite so bright. And I like the white up here because it kind of goes with that. I think this is a little strong right here, so I'm going to soften that white edge up just a little by bringing the texture in over. I think this texture might work well with these subjects. I'm just turning it on and off to see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and merge all of these. And then I'll duplicate this. And now I'm going to run Topaz Impression, that oil glaze preset. I'm going to run it on the whole thing. I could choose just to run it on the bird, but I like to run it on the whole thing first and see how that looks. Find my slider here, oil glaze. Okay, now this oil glaze light preset introduces a lot of saturated color. This one is a little softer, and then this one I've set up sticks with the original color. Now, I actually like the more saturated color. Oops. Kicked me out of my presets. Oil glaze. Oil glaze light. Oil glaze light 2. That one's kind of nice. This preset brightens everything up just a little bit. I kind of like that. I don't use that one a whole lot. And then this one boosts the saturation quite a bit. But I'm kind of liking this one. See, it just softens some of that noise up, and I can adjust the opacity of it since this is on a duplicate layer. I like that one. I'm keeping that one, so I'm going to click OK. And that just brightened it up a little bit. And if I wanted to adjust the opacity and bring some of the original back in, I could, or I could do some masking to bring back just certain areas, like if I wanted to do the eye, which I think is what I want to do. I want the eye and the beak to be a little sharper. So I'm just going to mask some of that impression layer off right around the edges of that because it softened that a little too much. And his little foot right there. Maybe even a little of this. Now I'll turn that off and on. That looks really good, so I'm going to merge that. I'll duplicate it. Now at this point I would probably go into Topaz Lens Effects, because Lens Effects has this great tool called Reflector Filter, and you can basically throw light around, gold or silver light, wherever you want it. And I will go through these and see what stands out to me. And if I don't like any of those, which I don't particularly care for with this image, I can go back to my host program, which is an old version of Paint Shop Pro, and I have the newer version, which I need to put on this computer and play with. I just haven't done it yet. But I'm gonna click OK and just go back there now and not use lens effects on this one. Alright, so here I am back in my host program, and one thing I like to do, if I want to bring this light down and really pump that up a little bit, what I'll do is I'll use my selection tool right here, freehand selection tool, and make sure my feather is set all the way up as high as it'll go. And I will just draw a little area right here like that, and it'll expand out, and then I'll adjust brightness and contrast or curves. I'm going to try brightness and contrast and see what happens. It just adds a little brightness there. And then I'll do it again, making another selection kind of in the same area, but because I have the feather set all the way up, it's feathering out real nice. And I'll go back to brightness and contrast, where I have a very low numbers chosen there because I don't want to overdo it. See how it's bringing that light in? Let me see if I can blow this up. Let me undo. Now watch after I redo the adjustment. See how it's bringing that light from the top right down there? And then I may do it one more time, just skimming the top of him just a little bit. And I'd rather have a low number in here for the adjustment amounts than go with a high number and then have to, see something very garish. I like. Now that's looking nice right there, but it's looking off just a little bit here, so I'm actually going to come here and do an adjustment on this corner as well. I'll just do it several times with a low number. And now it's a little off right there. So maybe I'll adjust that. So that just brightened up this top area a little bit to bring that light down to the top of his head. And if I don't like any of those, I can hit Control Z and undo them, but I actually like them, so I'm going to not do that. But that's just done with the selection tool with a high feather amount and adjusting brightness and contrast within that selection. And I always zoom out and look at this far away to see how it might look if it was hanging on the wall. And I think it looks really good. I like this little splash of blue-gray here. It kind of ties in with him. And I think these textures will work out very well when I get them done. So I'm going to get busy and finish the set or continue on with the set. It's got a lot of editing that needs to be done yet to make them suitable for blending with photographs. And this is just the first one I've done. And I do think these will work well with some of my natural subjects, though. So I'm happy with this. Anyway, I thought you guys might like to see a quick little edit this morning. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching, and have a great day.